This episode is brought to you by Peak Performers. What if the talent your team needs has been there all along, but you simply have not had a way to find it? Peak Performers helps organizations tap into a powerful and often overlooked talent pool. Professionals with disabilities. These are people who bring resilience, creativity, and strong problem-solving skills to their work, and who stay longer once hired. For more than 30 years, Peak has combined smart recruiting tools with genuine human connection to help organizations hire more inclusively and effectively. Learn how they can help you build stronger teams at peakperformers.org. Welcome to the Love in Action Podcast. I'm your host, executive coach, speaker, and author, Marcel Schwantes. I believe that when we show up with our full humanity to work and lead from a place of love, joy, purpose, care, and inclusion, it's going to make a radical difference in your leadership, your business, and your bottom line. This is a show about actionable, practical love, the verb, as a leadership and business strategy. Let's get rolling. Hey gang, welcome back. I got a great show for you today. I think this is going to be an important show. Some of you may have to hold up the mirror of truth as you listen to this episode, okay? Because, well, it may confront your current reality. Here's what I'm getting at. I think it's fair to say that, if you listen to the show, you probably crave a life of authenticity, trust, and things that lead to good relationships, a great workplace and, healthy leadership, things like that. And even extending that out to, say, your communities, your marriages, and your families as well. Okay. We want to be aligned, all those things. We want alignment with who we truly are, right? I think that's the majority of us. Yeah, too often, here's what I'm finding. We feel pulled between, our true selves at the core of who we are. And I'm speaking of values, our personal core values, right? And external expectations, like outside influences, maybe pressures to perform or scale the business in a way that doesn't feel right anymore. Maybe you're moving in a direction you feel in your heart of hearts that you didn't sign up for, which now has become maybe a cultural expectation of the job or, demands on you, pressures on you that you like, wait a minute, this is just not who I am at the core of my being. You know that in your heart, okay? So does that resonate with you guys? So the conversation we're going to have today, I kind of set the table for you, is going to be with Robert Glazer. He is a return guest, and he's back to share about his new book. And that book is called The Compass Within, a little story about the values that guide us. Now, I'm just going to give you a quick sneak preview here, okay? Robert wrote this really inspiring business parable. If you love stories, this is a good one. And it's about an ambitious young executive or director, manager, let's say, who's, moving up in the corporate ranks like many of us. And he's in this new leadership role, and he starts to face some tough ethical dilemmas, and it kind of goes against the grain. And so he embarks on a journey to uncover his personal core values. And many of you are going to find yourselves in that story if you read the book, because it happens a lot. And I also know this anecdotally because in my coaching sessions with leaders, managers, executives, some of them come to me and they say, Marcel, I no longer feel that my work aligns with my values. I hear this. So Robert Glazer does something really transformational in this book, okay, which we're going to talk about and break down. He's presenting a framework that readers can use to really find your clarity, sort of, get back to finding that true north, right? To guide you, to get you back into alignment with what matters most so that you can make better decisions about the biggest choices you have to make in life. Now, if you have not been introduced to Robert Glazer, He is a globally recognized entrepreneur, speaker, and author. He is the founder and former CEO of a 50 million marketing agency with an award-winning values-driven culture. Bob is the author of multiple bestsellers, including Elevate and Elevate Your Team. And you probably know him best from his super popular newsletter, Friday Forward. If you haven't subscribed to that Friday Forward newsletter, it's one of the best on the web. Can't wait to dive into this discussion. Let's bring him in. The one and only Robert Glazer now joins us. Bob, welcome to the Love in Action podcast.
Thanks for having me back, Marcel. Glad I made the cut.
Well, we were talking offline about this how we actually kick off the show. And I'm not quite certain if I had this question, so we're going to do it here. You ready?
I'm ready.
What's your story?
My story. So let's get that I'll give you the 60-second version. So my story is I've been a serial entrepreneur who started a bunch of businesses. I think I was a very creative ADD kid who was told that a lot of my strengths were weaknesses. And struggled a lot to figure out what I was good at and where I fit in. I think that ties a lot to where this work has ended up, particularly on understanding, if a lot of purpose and pain are tied. And I think helping people understand their values and their strengths and what it is they do well in the world and aligning to those as soon as possible is the best way to meet your potential. And I think I felt like I lived far below my potential for a large portion of my early life, and so that's become a motivating factor. So that's the 60-second version, and we'll talk about that. I think most of our core values are tied to these formative childhood experiences, and a lot of purpose is tied to pain, but people are afraid to kind of go there and look there because it's a little bit uncomfortable.
Okay, give us the 30,000 foot level kind of summary of the book, and also, Robert, why this book? Why now? In 2026.
Yeah. I say this jokingly, but I think this book can fix all the problems in the world. And so I'm joking, but I'm serious in terms of, I think we are incredibly tribal right now. I think if you look at how people act and behave and the nonsensical things that don't make sense that they support are because are not anchored and clear in values to be like, you know what, I'm with you on this, Marcel. And then you say, let's go do this. And you're like, Marcel, I'm out on that. That is not me or who I believe in, or what I believe in. So I think we don't have clarity with our values. And so I think we're inherently tribal. And that's become a problem. And so having done this core value work, seeing how powerful it was, having several thousand people take the course, I knew I always wanted to try to expand it more and I'd have a book, but I honestly just didn't think anyone would want to read a book called On Values. And so I was like, well, but anyone I've introduced this work to, they roll their eyes when they hear values because companies and individuals have made a mockery of values and platitudes and one-word things. But after I have never presented, I think I've done 30 keynotes since the book came out, plus interviews with someone, when they get into the depths, they're like, oh, that's crap and I don't believe it. They're like, oh, that's really different. And how you're talking about this is different and it's more tangible. And I can understand, like, maybe I haven't been clear on what these are and how they've been driving my behavior. And by doing that, I can make better decisions. And everyone's kind of all in on that. But I was like, how do I get them to that point? So why don't I show them a character that can be a mirror to their own life, right? And I think that's the main thing I hear about Jamie. People are like, you know what? I had that discussion, or I had that thing, or I remember that. Jamie's just a reflection, and you see him wrestle with these challenges. You see mirrors of those own challenges in your life, and then I give you the formula and everything at the end to how you can do that work yourself.
Yeah. Well, definitely. I want to get into that, touch on the formula, but I want to get this out of the way first. Okay. So many of us don't feel like core values matter enough, right? I think you alluded to it, like, oh yeah, they're platitudes. And so what do people get wrong about personal core values? I mean, we
I don't know that I don't, right. This is semantics. You say they don't matter enough. I think they're numb to it, right? Because they hear about it. So let's talk about what they are, because I think that's sort of where we start with the problem. So my definition of actionable core values are the non-negotiable principles that decide your action and behaviors. They're intrinsic, not aspirational. They reflect who you are, not you wish you were. They're consistent. They show up in all areas of life, work, relationships, and personal decisions. They're clarifying. They help you make better choices about who to spend time with, what work to do, and where to live. They're your ultimate sort of decision-making rubric. And as I define them, a core value that meets those standards can't be one word. It can't be integrity or family. It has to be something more specific. And I think the analogy that resonates with people the most, I've tried a few different ones, including, the invisible electric fence. But let's imagine you're driving a car through a tunnel.
Yeah.
And I turn off the lights, but you can see the exit of the tunnel. You are going to slide to the right side, hit the right wall. It's going to make a horrible noise. You're going to go back to the middle. You're going to overcompensate because you remember hitting the right. You're going to slide to the left. It's going to make a horrible noise. You're going to get to the end of this tunnel. You're going to get out, and your car is going to be beat up and look like shit. I don't know if we can say that, but we did. Now, let's say I turned on the lights. I'm going to see the white lines. I'm actually going to stay away from the white lines, and I'm not even going to hit the side of the wall. The lights are the white line is your core values. The wall is when your core value has been crossed, and turning on the light in tunnel is the illumination of where the core values are. I have talked to numerous people who have gotten through the tunnel without knowing where the lines were. We know it, we feel it, but there's a lot of damage to the car in in doing that. I mean, I talked to a guy, and we determined through an exercise we did that he had a core value that no one is better than anyone else, and he had a deep story from his childhood that cemented this in a core value. This guy's a serial entrepreneur. What has he done? He's created all non-hierarchical organizations, which has its own problems, right? But what he didn't do was figure out because he just knew I don't want an organization where. But what he didn't do was articulate that and say, at Acme Company, no one is better than anyone else. You may have a boss, but you're not better than them. So what would it have looked like for him if he had, instead of like bouncing off the walls, if he had been super clear and been able to design that into all of his organizations and be explicit about it?
Yeah, I want to bring in that the example that keeps coming to mind is not being congruent or having incongruence. I don't know, that word just kind of resonates with me. So, and that to me is, I mentioned it in my introduction, right? Whatever you create on the outside is now incongruent with who you are on the inside. And this is going to touch on your core values discovery process, I think. So how can somebody identify if they are out of alignment with their values?
You're falling into the trap, which is common. It's a great question because everyone wants to get right to alignment. I'm like, you got to know what you're aligning with, right? How do we, the first thing you need to do is do this work. You need to identify your core values, be like, yes, these are, and then you can start to look around and be like, oh, yeah, oh, no, but you can't put the cart before the horse. That is the problem. So the clarity comes first, and then you start to have real illumination about where you're aligned and not aligned. I'll give you an example. Yeah. This has been a very popular book and exercise among forums in EO, YPO, and Vistage, if you know kind of the forum structure. And these are groups that have been together for years, and people they talk about all kinds of problems because it's a whole bunch of CEOs and their family and their marriages and everything. It all ties together into their business. And these are groups that are very vulnerable with each other, and they have these retreats. Well, a couple of groups have used this book as a retreat and done the core value thing. And one of them told me that they went through and had a discussion with their forum that they had been with for 10 years around the big three in the book. So their community, their partner, and their vocation. And which and ones were they most aligned to, and why, when they looked at it through a values lens, and were they not? And they said, look, we've heard these issues over the years, but when the discussion about where was alignment, where was not, and how it tied to their values was the deepest and most vulnerable discussion, because they may have heard about this problem with whatever for a long time, but then the person was like, this is just a irreconcilable values click I have, and I have to make a decision on whether to exit this relationship or not. So that's just an example where I think that why, when they tied it to values for a group that had been discussing this stuff for years, it just made it a lot more real.
Yeah. Let's bring this discussion into maybe culture, because I mean, you headed up your agency a few years back. It was award-winning, so you understand culture.
Yeah.
What especially about, or how have you seen company culture dramatically improve through core values and the work of core values? within teams?
Yeah, so let's be clear that core values are different personally. And core they're different because they represent the collective group of behaviors of a team versus something around an individual. But if you've ever met a company with all companies have values. It just may not be the ones that they're saying or trumpeting.
Yeah.
So if you meet a great company or a great culture, they are actually rewarding their values. That is and the values as worded are the behaviors that they want. That's all that if individually it's your negotiable personally, it's the company. These are the behaviors that we are rewarding you on or slapping you from the wrist run, and what we say is important is what we actually do. Now, when Enron went out of business, its core values were integrity and respect and honesty, and everyone knows that's not how you got promoted at Enron. It was probably take excessive risks, don't ask permission, keep going and bend the rules. Like that's probably what they were bonusing. So this is the problem in that, again, a lot of companies show the platitudes. I always say, tell me what's being rewarded, and that's the actual culture. And it shouldn't appeal to everyone. This is the mistake everyone makes. I should have a set of values that are attractive to some people, like a value proposition for a university, and not attractive to other people. They should not be things that would appeal to anyone, because then they're platitudes.
Yeah. All right, gang, we're going to continue this discussion after a quick word from our sponsor. Hang tight. I want to take a moment to tell you about Peak Performers. They are a nonprofit staffing agency that helps organizations discover what they call talent without limits. Peak specializes in connecting employers with professionals with disabilities, an incredible source of untapped talent that many hiring systems miss. What stands out about this group and why employers love working with them is that they often bring exceptional resilience and a natural ability to solve problems. They also tend to stay longer, which means greater retention and more stability for teams. For more than 30 years, Peak has used a blend of smart recruiting tools and genuine human connection to help organizations hire in a more equitable and effective way. If you want a hiring approach that brings out the very best in people and strengthens your organization, visit peakperformers.org. Okay, Robert, so I'm curious to the skeptics in the room, right? Is there any hard data that says, yes, core values are important and here's why you need them?
I'm so glad you asked. So look, almost half the people in the US and the UK say they're considering leaving their companies because it doesn't exemplify their values. Gallup had a poll that employees who perceive a strong alignment between their values and those in the organization are 56% more engaged in their work. The NIH said that people who do work that's connected to their values are 30% higher life satisfaction, and leaders who talk about and live by their values are seen as 3 times as more trustworthy than their team. So if I was a McKinsey consultant and I said to you, I have this thing that you could do that gets you 3 times more trust, happier employees, more engaged, less mental health issues, less, decisions, people are like, oh yeah, like how much does that cost? And it's free.
Yeah.
And that's the thing where we're working with a lot of companies now, and frankly, a lot of leaders don't get this. But if you can help people figure out their core values, their personal core values, it helps them become better leaders, because they're going to lead from their values, whether they realize it or not, right? To me, it's the ultimate sort of leadership rubric. And that is, I think people are starting to realize, wow, if I could give everyone this clarity, they could be a better leader.
Yeah. Tell me if you get this a lot. A lot of people may have a basic understanding of what their values may be, but sort of in their heads, right? But they haven't quite crystallized it yet. It's not clear enough. So talk a little bit about how do you make it clear? I think you mentioned that there are 4 qualities of a good core value. Maybe touch on what those qualities are.
Yeah, the problem is, again, they're trying to default to a platitude or something like that, or say, here are the one words, versus getting into the questions and
like integrity, right? For example.
Yeah. So integrity is my number one. Integrity and family of a bad core value. is integrity? No, but it means 5 different things. 10. I've had 10 different. So if I said, Marcel, what's your definition of integrity? Someone's going to say it's to tell the truth. Another's going to say your word matches your action. Another's going to say it's you live your life to your full potential. Those are closer to a value that you would find is transferable across different aspects of your life and to the thing that is really important to you. When you say integrity, I know how to judge myself if am I doing integrity well? But if I say like my value is my words match my actions, that's a very clear way to, am I being put in a situation where I'm being asked to have my words different than my actions? Am I being true to that? Was I saying things like it's just a much more easier way to know that you're doing it.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to get into the book a little bit because there's a point in the book where Jack is the mentor and Jamie is a mentee, right? Or the main character. So Jack shows Jamie a list of questions and he handwrites them and then tells Jamie, go and answer these questions as detailed as you can, right? Why are those questions important? Why are asking questions, period, important in understanding the process of your values?
So the 6 questions that I have, and we'll get through maybe 1 or 2 of them. If anyone's interested, you could go to robertglazer.com/6, and they're all listed there with a little video of me answering them. But they're behavioral-based questions designed to invoke these highs and lows in your life and pull out the sort of underlying data that will be the theme of a core value. And some of them are negative because the forced negatives are interesting. I can figure out one of your values and we can do this hack by figuring out what you hate the most. Because that's the violation of your value. So, like one of the questions, like what professional roles and jobs did you do your best work? And the answer is not like at McDonald's. The answer is like, when I was at a team and I was given autonomy or I had creativeness or I was able to follow processes or I was told what to do or I was told what not to do, right? It's different for each person. But what about that work made it so great? The sort of 303 one, the deep one, what would you want said about you in your eulogy? That's kind of that gets to the heart of it. One of them I liked, what help, advice, or qualities do others come to you for? Like, what are you really good at solving for other people? And an example of one of those negatives is what quality in other people do you struggle with the most? And so everyone wants the shortcut in doing this work. And again, we can hack around one of them. The problem is it's even knowing the negative doesn't tell you the positive necessarily. You have to do some work. So I encourage people to follow the processes laid out. But if you want to have some fun, we could dive into that question with you. I've done it on some podcasts and we could probably get to a value pretty quickly.
You want to do it?
Let's do it. And I'll preface that because normally when I ask people so I'll say, what are the behaviors that you really don't like? They'll start off the sentence and they'll be like, what I really don't like, and then they'll be like, what I really hate it. Then when they start getting into it, it becomes visceral. I can usually tell them on the right course based on the person's facial reactions, not what they're saying when you hit it. So what's a behavior or something people do that just grates you? Or maybe there's a flashbulb story in your,
Yeah. So I am thinking of the opposite of authenticity, which is somebody that you just can't face reality, speak their truth, and be emotionally honest.
Okay.
How's that sound?
So what I heard from you is when people are sort of inauthentic, is that sort of when they're shallow or inauthentic?
Or afraid of expressing their true emotions. And I'm not saying, oh, you're a jerk, I hate your shirt. What I'm saying, it's becoming emotionally honest. I think authentic with what's inside you.
Right. So when people are shallow and not, okay, so then I'll do the party thing. So you're talking to a guy at a party and he's telling you his life is great and everything's great and his business is good. And you just sense that like this person is totally shallow and full of it and loves the 1% on Facebook, the best part of his life. Like, how does that feel for you talking to someone like that?
Well, like they are just blowing smoke up my ass. Pretty much.
Right. See how your language got and your face got, you're like, yeah, it sucks. You're like, I don't want to talk to this person. They are shallow and they're full of it. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you may have some sort of core value that's about be authentic or be yourself or have depth or something or something like that. But you appreciate people who show vulnerability and look. You ask, the first question you ask is kind of like, how did you get to where you were, and from what in your life got you there? Like you're looking for and I'm guessing you don't like the guests that just browse over that because they don't want to expose any emotional vulnerability.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that is a requirement the moment I shake your hand and introduce myself. No, but over time, as you develop a relationship, if somebody is still shallow and not going deeper,
right,
that annoys me.
Right. So I wish, if you guys aren't watching this, you could see you did exactly what I told you would do. You would start discussing this, and then as you narrowed in on it, your face got tighter and you were like, I hate shallowness, right? That is like, you kind of, and you're like, you did exactly what I said you did. What I kind of don't like to, like, I hate people that are shallow, right? This is why you probably have a podcast. You like depth and connection, right? And that is probably, we could play around with it, but there's probably some value about that. And this ties to the root of all values, I say, is either for or against from formative childhood experiences. There's a lot of data about this. So I'm going to take a shot here. Like for you, it was either you probably had a life growing up where everyone was very authentic and whatever, or they were shallow and no one ever talked about anything. And you guys can't see his facial reaction, but I know I'm right.
It's like, man, you just like, you read me like a book. It's like you've done that.
I'm guessing it was the latter. You had a shallow, unemotional environment. I could be, by the way you answer that.
My parents did not
talk about anything hard.
Their emotions and how they felt about things. They buried their feelings.
Right. So this is what happens. So and again, full circle, pain and purpose, which is why people have problems. They'll want to do this work with me and they'll say, I love my parents, but I'm like, you don't have to say that. You can say, I love my parents and it's your case, I love my parents. And we grew up in an environment where everyone tried to keep the best version of the truth and not get emotional. And that became really important to me. And now I started a podcast where I get people to talk about it, and I do communities. I do all this great stuff because of it. I mean, that is exactly what happens. We have these like rules, this operating system that forms in these formative years, and it's things that we loved and that we're doubling down on, and it's things that we're painful and we're moving against on, and then it shows that like you will never not lead with that. Right. And if I put you in an environment where you had to be shallow and say stuff you didn't mean, and, having a Twitter account where, you're from a different country, you'd be like, I don't want to do that. No, like, I don't want to do that. Yeah. So there's a good full circle thing. And again, everyone's like, oh, dude, we could do that but you want to do the process right. But that's how you know it's a value too, when you really can connect back to it came from somewhere that was a strong current. And I would say it's 40-60 to things that people were doubling down on that they liked, and 60% they didn't like it and it was painful. Or I had a podcast host and he was like, you have to be credible and you have to have facts and whatever. And I just, because I know these narratives and I know he was a intellectual British guy, I could just tell it was his dad. And I was like, so did you have a parent that walked into conversations and bullied everyone with no facts and no whatever? And he's like, I did. And he didn't want to say it, but it was just so deep. You could see it was so deep that this guy is now deeply intellectual and curious and does not let anyone walk in and dump bully someone by dropping things that are not true.
Yeah. And Robert, just so you know, I wanted to break the cycle that my parents, and maybe my dad got it from his dad, who was a very stoic German guy, right?
Yeah.
And that got passed on to my dad. And I didn't.
Or he was over emotional. What's kind of funny is, or he was someone who spilled his emotions so much that your dad couldn't deal with it and was going to be like, we don't talk about this stuff, right? There's a lot of generational ping pong with these things.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just wanted to break the cycle and be the authentic father to my son, who hopefully I'm modeling those behaviors down now. So.
And by the way, this is important because people always ask, do they change or whatever? The data says mostly they don't change unless you had a traumatic late life experience. But what's actually easing in the data, and Jonathan Haidt talks about this book, The Righteous Mind, you form these intrinsic, before you even have the cognitive ability to know why your values are sort of formed, you form them as a coping operating system. And that analysis of why you do that didn't come till later, but you started doing it just naturally as a reaction to it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I want to draw attention to the core values course that you teach. Even if people don't read the book, and I hope they will, your core values course explains the full process of that's in the book. So what do people need to know about this awesome course of yours?
So the course actually preceded the book, and the course takes the same information. Even people who read the book and say, look, I could do all this, and you gave me all the instructions, they like the scaffolding. They like coaching. There's a weekly email that comes with a tip and all kinds of stuff. So it's $100 course. It's not expensive. But if you want to do this work, I think it's helpful to have that scaffolding and accountability around it, and it's totally on demand. So basically, the book would show you what this all looks like in the real world, and the course kind of walks you through it and the exercises and gets you to a draft of your first core values.
Nice. All right. I got to ask, we've been talking about core values. One of mine.
Yeah.
Your core values.
So my core values are find a better way and share it, health and vitality, self-reliance, respectful authenticity, and long-term orientation. And the number dominating core value for me is find a better way and share it. Literally why I'm on this podcast. I like to figure out something that can help people be better, get probably something I needed, and then share it as widely as I could. But I can point to so many things in my life or career that tie to self-reliance and respectful authenticity. Again, to your core value of sort of be real and whatever. I mean, that's one where we probably align. Someone wrote me an email this last night about something that I kind of screwed up, and they were really upset about. And they're like, look, I just wanted to lay this on the table, and it was just a mistake and an oversight by me. I so appreciated them doing that. What I can't stand is passive aggressive people. I don't mind people directly saying, "Hey, you said this, and it bothered me," and what it might be. So I really like. I try to have difficult and authentic conversation in which I'm the person who will tell people the thing they don't want to hear or the truth. I watch a lot of time. I joke. I watch my wife call her friends to tell her exactly what she wants to hear and reverse her beliefs, and I think that's what they do. And I was like, they're all telling you what you want to hear. I don't know if that makes you feel better. I want the person who's gonna. I have a mentor coach who's been on my podcast, and a couple times I had formative things in my life where I said something to him, Philip McKernan, and he goes, "That's a nice story you're telling yourself, but I think you're full of shit." And I took 48 hours, and I came back to him, and I was like, I really thought about it, and yeah. That was an intricate lie, and here's why. That was a place of caring that he said that, and I really value those sort of people in my life.
Yeah, one of the things that I know about values is that it pushes you to the truth.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like you can't skirt your way around things when you finally get to the core of, all right, this is truly who I am and what I'm about, because people are going to call you on you being an imposter once they know who you truly are and what your values are. And if you don't walk the talk of your values, people are going to see right through you.
Yeah. And here's the problem. Values decisions are not easy. They can cost you money, job, friends. It is, and the decisions that you make early on are often in our 24/7 news cycle world. They're kind of just designed to like make it go away now. And then they kind of age worse, right? Versus sometimes you do the unpopular thing in the moment, but after a day you feel good, after a week you feel good, and after a month you feel even better because you were consistent and there was a reason for it.
Yeah. You said one of your values is long-term orientation, right?
Long-term orientation. Yeah.
What is that?
What is that? That is, I've always taken a long view on things. I'm incredibly uncomfortable with short-term schemes. And here's my kryptonite, when someone comes up to me at a party and they're like, there's this like Bitcoin arbitrage thing that you can make quick money on and whatever. Like, I'm just like, nah. I married my high school girlfriend. I'm actually impatient in the short term, but I'm very focused on like the long term and looking ahead. I spend a lot of it, what's around the corner, what's the next thing. It's just really my orientation. And in fact, I recognize that after COVID, I was really struggling in my business because you just had to manage crisis to crisis and I couldn't sort of plan ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I may be wrong. It might be a total false assumption on my part, but Jamie, the main character, his core values overlap with yours. I think I heard self-reliance and, of course, long-term orientation. How much of your story is in Jamie's story in the book?
I've been accused of being Jamie. I've been accused of being Jack. So there's truth, there's fiction. I'm not Jamie. It's different. That was made to make a point, but there's a whole bunch of truths. Some of the truths are insignificant in the book, but weaved in. But I'm not either. And when I think about Jack, obviously there's some piece of putting this together. Jack for me was sort of a architecture or caricature of sort of a perfect mentor kind of in my mind.
Well,
yeah.
This has been a great conversation. So as we wind down here, Robert, is there any question I should have asked that I didn't that people need to know?
People always ask me what's the sort of hardest part, about this, or where to struggle. And two things. One of them we mentioned, which is, or I guess maybe we mentioned both of them, which is like the willingness to really look back at these things and not assign blame, but understand like they were formative. It's hard for people to look back honestly, and not try to blame victimhood or blaming someone and just be like, no, this was just true for me, right? And it's important. The other thing is, everyone wants a hack on this. How do I do this faster? Can you do the trick you did with Marcel? Can I not spend the 2 hours on? I'm like, look, if you want to figure this out, then if you want to figure this out, then you got to spend a little bit of time on it. I have created a course and a book and a ChatGPT and all kinds of stuff to make it much faster than it was for me. But I can't take the work away from you, and everyone's looking for a shortcut these days.
Yeah. Yes, they sure are. All right, strap on your seatbelt. We have arrived at our speed round. I'm going to fire questions at you. You fire them right back at me. Here we go. What makes you smile these days?
What makes me smile? That's a good question. I like being outdoors. I'm always happy when I'm outdoors.
Good. Someone that inspires you right now.
Wow, there's so many non-inspiring things. I'm inspired by like clear-headed thinkers. So there's a guy, Haviv Reger, who writes about a lot of complex Middle East stuff in a very clear-headed way. I was also reading an article by Noah Smith this morning. He has a column called No Opinion, and I just think they're both really good, clear-headed writers.
Nice. Name a person, dead or alive, that you would like to have dinner with.
Herb Kelleher, the former founder of Southwest Airlines. I read the bio on him, and I just think what they did in an industry that's so hard is incredible.
Oh, yeah. All right. One of the craziest things you've ever done.
One of the biked from London to Paris overnight.
How long was that?
It was like a 17-hour bike ride out of 24 hours.
Back in the younger days. All right. We wrap up with your biggest hope for the rest of 2026. Well, the rest is we got the whole year. So,
well, my 5-year goal is to help 1 million people figure out their core values. So I'm going to have to make a down payment on that. So I hope there's a couple 100,000 people out there that take this work seriously and start down it, because I can tell you the notes and the things that I've gotten from people who have moved, switched jobs, careers, done stuff once they had this clarity is pretty powerful.
All right. Well, you've survived the speed round.
Thank you.
Okay, we bring it home with 2 questions as we do with every guest. The first one is, it's Love in Action is the title of the podcast. So how do I lead my team with more practical, actionable love day in, day out? Maybe it has to do with values. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, like help them be who they are. I think that's really the best thing you could do is help people be who they are and do more things aligned to it.
Love it. All right, bring us home. What's that one thing you want people to take away from this convo?
The core values have a lot of platitudes and whatever, but the real, and when you understand yours, I think you'll have dramatic clarity in your life and leadership.
Yes. Guys, get the book. It's called The Compass Within. There it is if you're watching on YouTube. Robert, point us to a few places. Where can people go to connect with you, learn more about you and your work, but especially sign up for that Core Values course?
Yeah, so everything is at robertglazer.com. robertglazer.com/6 is the 6 questions. You can compass-within.com is the book homepage, and there you can see there's a link to the course and the book and the GPT coach tool and everything right there. So that's probably the best place to go.
Awesome. And gang, I also encourage you to check out the first episode we had with Robert. You can find that conversation on episode 109, and I will put that in my show notes. Hey, it's been real. It's been fun. I have been enlightened and I learned something new. So thanks for doing that little exercise on the fly, because it brought out the importance for me of one of my core values is. So I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you.
All right. For Robert Glazer and yours truly, remember, in the end, love wins. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Love in Action podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it, subscribe, and leave us a review. Until next time, don't forget, the future of leadership is love in action. Believe it, practice it, and watch your leadership and business flourish.